Blessed love and peace. Again, again, again. So we begin this joint. This night is quiet. That means I'm loud. We got something to say about being loud too. God willing, later. In the meanwhile, make sure ain't no rice. All this. All right. So the first thing we begin with is this joint. It's an idea, a concept for a video game. The video game, the working title is The Bachelor's Affliction. And the basic premise of the video game is the game player has to do tasks that a bachelor has to do for himself, that many don't necessarily have that training or experience. And going through like the tediousness of those tasks. That's the video game. Exciting, enthralling. For example, let's say a brethren, a bachelor, has to clean his flat. And they're all different types of scenarios of what he has to clean or whatever else. But just given like a one general kind of thing, like just straighten up. Got to do laundry, like dishes or whatever else. Sweep floor. And so like the gamer arrives at the flat. There may be like an abstract that says tasks or whatever. It might just be like, yo, you gotta find it for yourself. Now, presumably a bachelor is gonna basically intuitively know what he has to do because he knows what he hasn't done. But for the gamer in this point, in this scenario, it's just like, okay, get into the apartment, see what needs to be done. And it might be like, yo, a guest is coming over, or guests are coming over. And so it has to be straightened up in a certain time frame. Can he do it? But the thing about it, it's further. So I mean, at the surface level, it's like doing those tasks, like straightening up, folding, and however kinfolk do those mechanics. It's not just like click and there's done, but like going through the tediousness and like the different, requiring some kind of like click, 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 click to do the different points of folding, and additionally. And sweeping and getting everything done and everything else like that. So as much as detailed and everything else as these point of view gaming systems for shooting things up and everything and killing things, similar detail and whatever else to just a cleaning a flat, like what's it called, Toast, is it? But getting the mechanics of that and doing the tasks. Well, here's the thing about it. That's the service level, and doing all the different tasks, have to look to see, get the corners, check under the rug and everything else like that. The thing about it though is like different there's levels to the game, because like this could be like adjustable settings, and the further like intense versions of the games involve the psychological barriers to cleaning, recognizing that's significantly involved, particularly for a bachelor, but for anybody. So for example, if clothes are piled up, and there are a lot of tasks to do, like the gamer has to decide which tasks are the easiest to start with to get some momentum, okay? Because there's a psychological block. To get started with the most tedious stuff might just like be exasperating, and that plays out in terms of the fatigue level. Like it might go slow, like the click might be not as responsive. There might be a lag in starting off with the hardest tasks first, compared to like starting off with smaller tasks and building some momentum, and then the tasks themselves become quicker because there's momentum built, there's rhythm, and further additional factors that can play into it include like turning on some music and then and that helps, that makes it the responsiveness of the clicking whatever further quick, the quick click. So all those things factor into it, whether the light is like letting some sunlight in, and that providing some energy, opening the window, and that got that fresh breeze in, that picks up the step, and just things like that are actually involved in cleaning. And then Like attention to detail, like in washing the dishes, rather than just like blah blah blah. There is done. Like yo, get the crevices and everything else like that. And when that's not done, that can slow it up. I mean, and then like the concluding thing when completing the task is then getting evaluated and seeing how decent the task is done. Um, and that's like that particular level or that particular stage. Um, and all different types of scenarios. It can be the same flat and different tasks. It could be different presets. Here we go with the alarms. It can be different presets concerning um, the circumstances. For example, in one scenario, it might be a particular flat, and the scene is haven't done chores for 2 weeks. Okay, now it's accumulated. Where do you begin? The bathroom, the kitchen, the living room, or whatever, and then start from there. It might be another scenario. Might be haven't done chores in 2 months. OD. There it is. Let's get started. Might want another scenario might be um, skip chores this past week. Guests coming over in 2 hours, something like that. I mean, just stuff like that. And then it could be adjustments of the flat, and it could be family style too. Bachelor gets married, has children. Now do what? Um, so, anyways, all those variables factoring in, and then it being an ongoing thing because after the completion of each stage, now like the person, the gamer has experience, and there's a timeliness to it because haven't played in a week, that means chores haven't been done in a week. If you play every once a week for the past 2 months, chores have been done, so now it's easier. The flat is not as messy or whatever else. So it's one of those. It can be that version of like that full season cycle, doing like a full year or whatever, and getting ratings, and then like it being an interactive thing, and competing against other kinfolk. How about that? Competing about daily chores that we should be doing anyways. How about that? Um, but again, building familiarity, doing the laundry by hand. What up? And that could be different. That could be two different settings about what facilities there are. Whether there's dishwasher settings or no dishwasher, you are the dishwasher. Laundry, uh, or otherwise. And then the other thing also is like in getting the radio, putting on the radio. Look how old I am. Putting on the music. Um, that adding to the quickness. So obviously, why would you not do that? But at the same time, there might be an energy factor, or a money factor, meaning that electricity. So burning up electricity in order to go faster, but now that increases the cost. So now there's a bank account effect. Um, so, anyways, that's the joint. That's the thing. And there could be a companion game called The Bachelorette Affliction. So, anyways, that's the joint. That's one joint of consideration for the moment. Now, um, there's going to be further joints to share today. So here's another joint to share. Back into the realm of the pornography. So, a few things to recognize and further. Uh, and again, yeah, this is all self purging or self reconciling or self TMI or whatever else, but at the same time recognizing that hundreds of millions of people are afflicted by this at this moment. So it's an articulation of observances within myself and around myself, and some sharing of notes for better understanding in this experience of work in progress. So in this respect, what is recognized is that, as I mentioned before, when interacting with the general public, there is an involuntariness and impositions. And I talked before about how the ways in which a man primarily abuses a woman is physically, and the primary ways in which a woman abuses a man is mentally. And that's serious. And I also mentioned that when a man and a woman have sexual intimacy, that's a cipher. That's a lifelong bond. Even when it's done through the double screen, or even just like old school pornography videos or whatever else, that also is a lifelong commitment. It's part of what is causing the like macro system malaise, because it's all different types of debauchery, even though there's like barriers that kind of dilute it, but it's still an effect. It might be a diluted effect, but it's still an effect. And so it's a matter of recognizing that. Now, so in interacting in that scenario of walking just in public, going to the store, going to the library, just being around the village or whatever, and interacting with sistren who are displaying sexual prowess, very attractive women, seeing the advertisements, the posters, the commercials, and everything else like that. In that experience of the fusion, again, just having that visual is not as an intense fusion or oneness of flesh as compared to like having physical intimacy. So again, it's a diluted, but it's still a very potent effect, and it's a very harmful effect, because particularly for a man who is backed up, built up, must or otherwise, those signals, that influence is heightened, and that affects his mind afterwards, continuing beyond days, even years later. One simple interaction, one simple visual beyond his volition affects him. I'm speaking from experience as well, personally. Just seeing an attractive young woman, and then it's not even a matter of lust. It's a matter of like, who is she? Da 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 da. And then another one, who is she? And like endeavoring, particularly when having benevolent, honorable intentions and discipline, it becomes a venture of trying to find a way for marriage and commitment, and additionally, not even knowing her from rip. And again, that could be easily dismissed as psychotic or obsessive or whatever else. But at that point, like, the psychologists and the psychiatrists and the psychological practitioners are testifying about themselves, because those kinfolk are very much enveloped in the sexual deviance already. So it's just finger pointing at what one's doing oneself. So anyways, we're being honest here. So point is, it's a strong mind meld. It's a strong cipher, and it's diluted from the actual direct fornication, but it's still a strong cipher. And the point for all this, because I've said all that before, but the point further is this: that it's not just a matter of a physical attraction. In that cipher, in even that diluted cipher, the influence that a woman has isn't just a matter of it's not just a matter of thirst trapping. It's not just a matter of getting that man's attention and making him think about her and wanting to have sex with her, or even wanting to try to marry her. It's not even just about that. But it's a diluted cipher, such that whatever her politics are, whatever her economics are, whatever her religiosity is, if she's smoking, if she's drinking, if she's having sex with other dudes and everything else like that, a man seeing her and being attracted to her is increasingly influenced by the things that she's doing, even that he doesn't see. And additionally, and again, where's the evidence of this and everything else like that? Yo, be honest and find it yourself. But that's the actuality, and this is communicated so that people can be knowledgeable, so that sistren can be knowledgeable. Again, I'm concentrating this to an audience of 15, 16-year-old sistren, again, because not completely innocent and not completely corrupt, generally speaking. So just being honest, of understanding the effects of going out in public, and everyone that sees a woman in such a way being affected by everything that she's doing. That's part of the nature of the cipher. And again, it's not as intense as a man and woman actually having sexual intercourse with each other. However, it is a considerable influence. So that's one thing being recognized. One way of liking it um, is like people who appreciate fresh air, breathing fresh air, and then being around people who smoke. Don't have a choice. Breathing in secondhand smoke, we know that causes cancer. Um, and there's little option when it's all around. All there is secondhand smoke all over the place. So in this particular instance, in my example, one terse metaphor or comparison is uh, valuing fresh air and dealing with the pervasiveness of secondhand smoke with all its toxins. And additionally, and it may not be as bad as crack or other types of pollution, carbon monoxide or whatever, but still it causes cough and disease. So as a way of mitigating those effects of the secondhand smoke that are not volitional, it's a matter of being proactive in smoking herb and causing herb smoke to now that mathematics gets a little bit tenuous because the herb smoke doesn't necessarily clear out the tobacco smoke. I know less about the effects of those two competing for space and air, because most likely it just gets merged with each other. However, the presumption is the herb smoke provides a healthier environment without the same prospect of cancer, secondhand smoke cancer, compared to the tobacco smoke. So the preference is natural, fresh air. And the resorting is herb. And that's not to utilize herb or tobacco because both of those are medicine, hiji, cannabis, respectively. But that's an example. So the other thing also is to recognize we don't want to use sex is a holy thing. Sex is the methodology of procreation. It's sacred, it's miraculous, and is meaningful. And just like other elements of life that have the same or similar or complementary qualities of sacredness and holiness and miraculousness, it can be used also as weaponry. When women utilize sexual prowess for thirst trapping, as I was referencing before, stringing a man along, teasing, getting attention, and manipulating men's lusts and weaknesses for gains. So again, men are responsible for men's own actions and can't use anything as an excuse. But this is a matter particularly for a 15, 16-year-old sister to be mindful of the effects of what is done, the karma and the balance. So it's one thing for that to be done in a historic typical society. But here's the thing. In a democracy where women are citizens, again, the buck stops with the citizens. And when the laws and conditions that are established by the governance of a democracy or a republic or a representative democracy, or however people want to classify it, when those policies, when those conditions that are decided through the auspices of the democracy and the citizens are obstructive of healthy relationship, obstructing a man and a woman being married, obstructing or working adversarially to a husband and wife staying together, the women citizens of society are equally responsible and culpable, accountable for those transgressions as male citizens. And when female citizens, and even just regular females, utilize sexual prowess to take advantage of conditions amidst those transgressions of deteriorating relationships and the possibilities and cultivation of relationships, healthy relationships, then there is increased responsibility and culpability on the women who do that. And this is not women hating. This is not women hating. Women are beautiful. Just recognizing amidst the significant contemporary trend of uber feminism, to recognize that, and how emasculating, demasculating society is, how governance is, and further, we want to stay off the rant slope and focus on the factual. So and trod through the stigmatization and accusations to share the actuality, because it's legitimate and beneficial. In a healthy relationship between a man and woman, a husband and wife who are committed to each other for life, there is a multifaceted and omnifaceted sharing between a man and a woman, support, benefits, and services that each provide for each other. In a comparatively superficial, surface level relationship or interaction between a man and a woman, a very just reduced, redacted, whatever relationship between a man and a woman, the base kind of wants that a woman wants from a man and a man wants from a woman, we can call it toxic, we can call it selfish, just call it selfish, in a selfish relationship or a selfish interaction between a man and a woman. The stereotype or the typical scenario is that a woman or a man simply wants a woman for sexual, physical gratification, sexual, physical intimacy, and all the different ego boost and his own self-evaluation and sense of accomplishment or conquest or whatever else. But it's physical. And so that's what is perceived very often of a man, or that a man gets or receives or obtains in that type of interaction with a woman. On the other side, and what a woman gives up by providing that to a man. It's a very superficial, crass, short-term, short-sighted perception and understanding of the nature of the interaction, but that's very much what fuels and motivates people. Just get a quick fix. On the flip side, what women want from a man, generally speaking, very often, is attention, protection, aside from just physical or aside from just material support. It's attention and affirmation, and emotional, mental support, even information, knowledge, know-how. So it's not the physical interaction per se. However, women want sex just as much as men want emotional support as well. But generally, primarily, what is recognized is women want something different from men than what men want from women. So, that being said, I'm trying to think of the balanced way of presenting this, and think and considering the different sides of the coin. For the moment, rather than getting enveloped in that thought process, I say the basics of it, and I leave the rest for the moment for further reasoning and get back at this. So basically, what I'm saying here is this: when the rules of the government, society, and additionally are obstructive of healthy relationship. When there is significant devaluation of masculinity, where there is the pervasive imposition of thirst trapping, and additionally, that is a strong imposition on a man's masculinity. And in the general relationship between men and women, and between a man and a woman, between a man and women, and presumably, again, having it done the thought process through this, between woman and men. Yet right now we're talking about Freud, man and women. Now let's say man and woman. In that relationship, in a committed relationship, healthy, supportive relationship, there is subordination. There is a man acquiescing to a woman. There's the acquiescence of the husband to the wife, and there's acquiescence of the wife to the husband in different complementary ways. In other words, one way of describing is in that relationship, a husband and wife, the wife doing what the husband wants in many ways, and the husband doing what the wife wants in many ways. Ultimately, in a healthy relationship, let me tell it, I have yet to experience it, but in a healthy relationship, both are working together for a purpose greater than each one's self. So it's not just a matter of doing what the other wants, but working together to fulfill that purpose, that greater purpose together. So it's beyond wants. That being said, we can perhaps phrase the notion of will in another way, but there is a certain earthly component to this, a very definite earthly component to this, but we can just perhaps refer to it as acquiescence. So in societal conditions, when a man is celibate, when a man is chaste and not having sex with a woman, and additionally, he is not having that experience of a woman acquiescing to him in a physical, intimate way. However, at the same time, when the conditions are very hostile towards healthy relationships, and additionally, there is still the prospect and propensity and actuality of a man and men acquiescing to a woman in the way that women typically want, in terms of attention and knowledge and support, and additionally, without it being readily perceived as an abuse or a violation or exploitation, when in actuality it very much is. If men are stereotypically perceived as wanting women as, and this is not the healthy thing, but men wanting women as a sex bunny, and just for that purpose, and when a man wants or endeavors to utilize a woman as a sex bunny, that is recognized as sexual exploitation and is wrong. And in the same way, on the flip side, when women stereotypically want men simply as a teddy bear, to listen to them, to have their tea parties with them, and give them attention, and additionally, to give women, beautiful, holy, sacred women, attention. That's sexual exploitation. A man giving his time, energy, thought, consideration to a woman is comparable to a woman giving her body, quote unquote. And again, those are so objectifying, but the objectification is in both directions, and it's a matter of recognizing that. And men have done women so dirty for so many generations that the exploitation of women towards men, meaning how women exploit men, has been significantly ignored. But at the same time, that's not giving a pity party for men. It's a matter of acknowledging that, so that, and recognizing the effect of that has been the deterioration of relationships across the board. Because at least when it's been the men exploiting women situation primarily, it's always been women exploiting men, because in those good old days of men being men and women being quiet, um, women haven't been being quiet. Women have been guilting and egging on and manipulating the husbands and men, and additionally into warfare, into conquest, into excessive accumulation of material wealth, and additionally. So it's women haven't been innocent in that scenario, and that doesn't excuse any of the atrocities in terms of rape and pillaging and cheating and adultery and all the things that men have done, but just recognizing that women haven't been innocent this whole time. But men have just been so much caught up in men's own bullshit that in the past few generations, there's been this ascendance of a feminist trope, which is just a different. It's a luxury of imperialism. Um, it takes two to tango, and it takes two to tyranny. How about that too? So, um, anyways, recognizing that uh, how women sexually exploit men. Teddy bear. Just as men do the sex bunny, women do the teddy bear. And when the conditions of society are such that are obstructive towards healthy relationship, when women take advantage of the challenges that men experience, then there's that. And the point is that pornography is a way, and it's not healthy and it's not advised. It is unhealthy. It is, try not to say evil all the time, but it is along those lines. It is a very painful, hurtful experience for all kinfolk involved. However, it is a way men have an access to balancing that perception or delusion of having a woman acquiesce to his physical desires after being thoroughly um, imposed upon and exploited for acquiescing and providing women's emotional desires. So that's something for consideration in the totality of the conditions of contemporality. Um, we're not done. We still got further. So again, I'll also describe that the distinction of the types of pornography. Again, all of it is hurtful. All of it is bad. All of it is harmful. Um, there are degrees. Again, as I mentioned before, from like tenacious, nasty, actual harm. It's not actual harm. It's like extreme type joints to the point of um, men and women having sex together and recording that and showing that to further basically forms of exhibitionism on the part of women. So again, it's all harmful. It's all hurtful. So as I mentioned before, a man watching another man have sex, it's not a matter of judging. It's just a matter for just to be just a matter of fact, 100% facts. That's homosexual. A man gaining, and not even intending to, but it's part of the conditioning. I've watched men have sex with women with being caught up in the drunkenness, not trying to watch a man have sex with, not thinking about that, just looking at the woman, but still, like when sobering up, it's like, wait, hold up, wait, no, nah, I'm not trying to see that, no. So, anyways, my point here is actually just to describe what I previously viewed um, over 7 years ago, the type of pornography that after 30 years of struggle with it, um, the type of pornography that I would uh, view. And it was, again, no men, not involved at all. Not even men talking to a woman off camera, meaning a man off camera talking to a woman being featured. Not even a man or anybody, a second person, like using a camera and videotaping a woman. Just not trying to think of a dude at all in that kind of scenario. Um, and there's further factors I've described probably a long time before that in viewing pornography, there becomes this diplomatic thing for myself personally, because that's my walk in this life. So it's a matter of viewing women from many different ethnicities, um, in with equal types of duration and otherwise, and then also women who are natural hair, natural features, not trying to see makeup and other things, pubic hair to show that she's of appropriate mature age and further, and so TMI, that's what it is. And that's actually appropriate, because it's beneficial to recognize what is being portrayed and what is being emphasized, with the emphasis of shaved and shaved pubic areas and otherwise, sense of prepubescence and otherwise. Facts. And that doesn't excuse otherwise the other things, but just to recognize that. So anyways, that's what I view. That's what I look for over about 10 years ago. Um, so that's the susceptibility, that's the history, and those are the lessons that I learned in this process. One other thing on this topic is after 30 years, since the age of 5, actually even before that, but particularly since the age of 5, dealing with this phenomenon and this affliction, I'm able to reach a point in my spiritual path of stopping, of letting it all go. And I'm able to do that and maintain that for about 7 years, just until a few years ago. And at that point, after 7 years of zero, no pornography, no masturbation, no lusting after women, disciplining thought, still being attracted, still working for marriage with a woman, but being disciplined, occasionally having the involuntary night emissions or whatever here and there over the course of 7 years. Otherwise, strong discipline and a lot of lessons learned, a lot of sobriety, a lot of perspective, a lot of healing and well-being. Maybe some hubris as well after a number of years in that experience of healing and well-being. Maybe a certain amount of perhaps hints of, I won't say invincibility, but just perhaps being able to take on further and avail myself to further temptation than I may be able to handle. However, what happens is 3 years ago now, as circumstances precipitate, I prepare to leave the country, with the prospect of never returning. Again, going to Denmark and being a refugee. And in that process, I have to make preparations, give away basically all my worldly possessions, or near that amount. Books, furniture, musical instruments, and otherwise. Basically just leaving with what I can take to Denmark and be in the refugee camp with. And that involves a mental strain. There's a lot of stress, and there's vulnerability. So no excuses, but just communicating the conditions. And so in those type of conditions, when we are in a discipline, a routine, and have strength through that routine, and we're facing the prospect of changing that routine, and thus not having the same strength and discipline as we do before. That's part of the consequence, and it's at that moment it's beyond my personal wants or volition or whatever. So it is what it is, and so I have to avail myself to some of those vulnerabilities in preparing for this change. And that might be where some of the hubris is, of thinking, okay, I've been doing this for a number of years, it's no problem. Strong confidence in the discipline, because by that point, like I said, I got acclimated to focusing my mind and avoiding temptations, and avoiding just availing myself to them temptations for the most part. Like I said, well, there will be occasions when women approach me additionally, and I respond, answer questions, and be as congenial as possible. And like I said, occasionally that results beyond my volition. That night, having a nightly mission would be beyond my control, and I recognize that. So that's one of the reasons why spiritual men are guided not to talk with women whom outside of one's own relations. So anyways, that was the experience for 7 years. When I endeavored to leave the country, make these changes in my discipline, and avail myself to the unknown, earthly wise, there are vulnerabilities. I get thwarted. I get to the airport, refused admission onto the airplane, and I have to readjust. I get back here to reevaluate and make adjustments accordingly, and basically get put into a holding pattern of getting travel credentials, and that holding pattern lasts for a number of months, and there's little other prospect other than just waiting for the travel credentials to be supplied. In that process, I have a cell phone. Usually don't have a cell phone up to that point. I acquire one particularly for the purpose of traveling at that moment, being overseas and being prepared for that. And so in having a phone and having phone service, now I have the double screen right here and the Wi-Fi right at my access. And again, before I'm able to avoid temptation, being here by myself, have that susceptibility of and then didn't watch, was comparatively unfamiliar with TikTok at all. And so basically, again, in this holding pattern, don't have any other projects that I'm working on too tough at that moment. The main focus is just getting out of the country and have to wait just for the credentials to arrive. So without anything else to do, waiting here to get the credentials. TikTok, boom, and again, looking for community. And additionally, but again, eventually, like, get drawn into watching women dance, all the trends never seen before. Wow, she's pretty. Oh, she's pretty. There are other things that happen as well, but again, that's what happens, and that's how I get enveloped initially, or revert back into preceding afflictions. When the travel credentials arrive, I leave the country and return to my discipline and otherwise. But at that point, it stopped a pattern of 7 years of sobriety, and showed the weakness and the susceptibility. So that's where the conditions are, not just for myself, but for those who are observing and otherwise. So that's what we are dealing with at this moment, because there still has yet to be settledness. I've been forcibly brought back here, and in being forcefully brought back here, what they call it, deported, in being forcefully deported, living under continuing hostile conditions. So make preparations as much as possible, make arrangements as much as possible to avoid the temptations. No Wi-Fi here, but still have this device. And in the moment, working on a project that requires utilization of this device, not hating on this device. It's not this device's fault. It's on me. But I have to process what I'm doing, what I can do, what influences me, and otherwise. So whilst continuing to work on this project that requires the device being in my immediate proximity, then that means being susceptible to doing these joints that take me away from my routine. And obviously there's a purpose with this, averaging I think 0.2 views per video, but the purpose is beyond that, and the official view count is actually not necessarily the most accurate indication of viewership and audience. So we don't worry too much about that anyways. However, there is a window that's open that avails itself, or avails myself, to adverse influence. So I have to be mindful of that, and I'm dealing with that at this moment. So that's part of the explanation. That's part of the notes that I share from this side of the experience, some of the things that are learned, some of the things that are still being worked within. Concerns about what people think, what dudes think about me being a loser or whatever else. Any kinfolk who worries about myself in such a way, that's a reflection on them, and what they're dealing with at that moment. First of all, it's not even a matter of what about a man being able to get a woman, because all that is just exploitation and delusion and pain and affliction, and worrying about what other dudes think about another dude and everything else. Like, that's all like insecurities and otherwise. The main concern, there's two main concerns. One is, it's all about harm and hurtfulness. and how much a man hurts himself, how much a man hurts others. So that's one thing. Um, Regardless of how much it's diluted, and additionally, it's still harm. So the consideration is minimizing the harm and optimizing the well-being. And particularly for the man, when he emits his seed, that's his life force. That is affliction. It's not, obviously it's not suicide out and out, but it's along those lines. It's actually in many worse than cutting himself and self-afflicting, because his life force is body, mind, heart, and spirit, significantly, intensely. Um, so that's a significant concern, and uh, and that's whether he's watching pornography or whether he has sex with a woman who he's not planning to ever see again in life. So like when men or other women talk about derisively or whatever towards a man self-afflicting in that respect, spilling his seed futilely by whatever means, it doesn't make a difference, like at all, whether it's with a woman who's dime piece baddie or whatever, or if it's just some pathetic dark screen pornography thing. It's him spilling his seed. In actuality, he's causing further harm, generally speaking, to the woman that he's actually having sex with, that he's not married to, that he's not planning to support. And additionally, then he's causing to a woman that he's watching online, and additionally, generally speaking. And again, it's all harmful, and it's not one doesn't excuse the other, one doesn't right the other or otherwise, but it's just a matter in terms of getting off the ego thing. And that, again, I'm not saying that for my benefit. I've gone way past caring about what people think about me. I do care about how well people are. So anyways, I share that for people to consider, to be honest, and just understand the logic of that, and the actuality and the truth within that. Because that delusion of valuing men based upon how much they can conquer other women, what kind of women they get, that all contributes to a toxic environment of norms and expectations and valuations about relationship and interaction. So that's the purpose for me sharing that. That's the purpose of me sharing all of this, basically, to help healthy society and being honest about what's happening at the moment, getting past the superficial BS standards of judgment and valuation, and just look at cause and effect to oneself and also to others, short term and long term, intergenerationally. So that's what this is. We've said blessings already. So that's much of it. Trying to think of anything. There was something else. I think that's it for this topic, though. I was talking about being loud. The whole thing about being loud. I mean, I guess for kinfolk who have the mindfulness, it's a matter of just being patient. At certain points, there's appropriateness to like stand up. However, by and large, it's a matter of recognizing that when people are loud, people are children. Everyone's a child of God, but what we're talking about here in terms of children is just like being children, being loud, and being raucous or whatever else, because they don't know how to express themselves otherwise. Whether that's just being drunk and talking loud, whether that's walking through the sidewalk and just being trying to be boss dogging, whether that's doing chirp chirp, click click, honk honk, pound pound with music systems and otherwise. All these different ways of being loud and imposing that loudness on others is just children throwing a tantrum to whatever degree the children are being loud. That's it. And it's a matter of recognizing that these are the conditions of city life, that like when we talk about using our indoor voices and using our outdoor voices, that when we are outdoors in a city where other people are living, where other people are sleeping, there's another category, using our outdoor voices and then utilizing our out in the country voices. And a lot of kinfolk are using our out in the country voices when we are in close quarters with each other. So, hey, it is what it is. Cats do what cats do. We have to pick our occasions and otherwise. But just recognizing part of the patience, that just recognize when kinfolk do that for whatever reason, even if it's slaves responding and doing the bidding of others, it's children throwing a tantrum. Now, that's not the, okay. Now, I can be called out. Well, what about when you do your drum and you disturb everybody else, this and the other? Beautiful. Let's talk about this. There are additional reasons why people make a noise. There are additional categories of reasons. One is selfishness, as I mentioned, just throwing a tantrum. For example, how do you tell the difference? Oh, I'll go say some additional categories. One is just selfishness, throwing a tantrum. Another one is teaching. Another one is healing. We can throw another one in terms of construction or productivity or otherwise, but that can also just be an excuse or a pretense for throwing a tantrum, and just having some surface level reason for throwing a tantrum. But those are the plutocrats that are throwing the tantrum at that point and just employing others to make the noise. So that's before we get into that category. That first category of just selfishness. How is it just selfishness? If you think about it, ask this very simple question: why are you being loud? What is the purpose right here? Why are you doing this? If it's kinfolk being drunk on a Friday night, a Saturday night, or whatever, what we can often expect is simply the response: I can do what I want to do. I worked all week or whatever. I deserve it. I'm just kicking. I'm letting loose. Blah blah. This is where I live. I can do what I want to do. What you gonna do? It's a free country. Okay, but basically, what's being communicated is that I want to. It's myself. It's selfishness. So, all right, that's a reason. Okay, fine. But again, that's selfishness, and you're just saying I'm a child. I'm throwing a tantrum. I have the right to throw a tantrum, and I don't care who it affects. I'm gonna throw my tantrum. Bump in the car, and additionally, and all the other things, what's the purpose? What's the reason for doing this? Again, if one is reverting to this notion of it's my right, I can do what I want to do, this and the other, then the reason is a self-involved reason. It's selfishness, particularly when it's imposing upon others and what other people are doing, other people's rights, and what other people want. So again, children causing a tantrum. Now in those situations, again, we can call it out. We can be stubborn, and we can do a contest of wills and who could be louder and everything else like that. But then that becomes a sequence often of just children throwing tantrums to children and for causing further disruption. So there's that. Now, what about myself and the drum? And additionally, guess what? I'm not doing it just for myself, and I'm not doing it primarily for myself. I'm doing it to teach. Hada. It's for a purpose greater than myself. There's a lot of healing and need for drumming, regardless of how much people dislike it and genuinely are hurt by it. Like that drum causes thoughts of violence and static and just disruption of concentration. That's genuine and recognized. However, at the same time, the drum is a legitimate ancient experience of culture and ancestry and spirituality. And there's a lot of, on this land, on this continent, in this hemisphere, there's a lot of atrocities that have been committed in extracting the drum from kinfolk. So me playing the drum is part of the process of teaching kinfolk the drum again, and also healing the continuing disease that all kinfolk on this land are experiencing. So it's for a purpose greater than myself. It's not just because I want to get loud and express myself, or because I have a right to, or I want to, or I worked hard to, or I paid a lot for this drum to. That's not it. It's a greater purpose. So it is what it is. Kinfolk can process it accordingly, but understand the difference. All noise is not created equal. All sound is not created equal. How about that? Scene. So Teaching is another reason. Healing is another reason. Now we get into the productivity, the construction, and people, again, like I said, I gave a talk on this joint a while ago, just like a week or so ago, in the midst of a considerable amount of noise and pollution. We're talking about construction on buildings and construction on roads. We can talk about traffic before the sun rises, interrupting sleep patterns and waking patterns, and further interrupting spiritual practices. And there's all a surface level reason. Yo, I gotta go to work. Yo, we're maintaining this building right here. We're doing renovations and additionally. Okay, so there's a certain legitimacy within that. However, at the same time, it still causes a significant amount of pollution, sound pollution, air pollution, kicking up dust and otherwise. And those are impositions. It contributes to the further toxicity, multifaceted toxicity within the environment. So it's for society, community, kinfolk to evaluate and discern how necessary the pollution is compared to the productivity. A lot of the construction, again, is cosmetic, it's unnecessary, and it's actually targeted. Demolishing shopping malls and constructing shopping malls in the same space, it's constructive, it's productive. Here's a new shopping mall with brand spanking new buildings. But at the same time, it's not necessary. It's a lot of pollution. It may employ many kinfolk for that particular project at that moment. Those kinfolk can be employed in further healthy endeavors like cleaning the water, planting trees, cultivating agriculture, planting fruit trees, cherry trees and apple trees and pear trees. Oh my. Reintroducing kinfolk to natural sources of nutrition. Knowing what cherry blossoms look like, what plum blossoms look like, what strawberry fields look like, and further, instead of new strip malls and everything else. So, ultimately, again, the blame is right here, and how much we feed all the things we disagree with. We each have a choice, we each have a responsibility, we each have a path. So, that being said, that's what's going to be said for this moment. We give all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim, blessed love and peace in Rastafari.